line of my ranch.
Wow.
It's about 50,000 acres.
Arivaca Lake is on your ranch.
Yes, in the town of Ruby. But the Nogales Station assistant manager said that this area right here is the busiest area in the whole Tucson sector. Now it changes. The cartel, you know, puts emphasis on one area and then they move to the other. It's a cat and mouse game. But so what we plan to do is go from here down the road, and you've been down it, all the way down here to California Gulch, and then all the way down to here, and maybe I can show you the border right along here.
Absolutely. It's very rugged down in here, and I think this is where the trails coming out of Mexico meet up with the border right around this area.
They're roads.
Yeah.
Big roads coming right to
They're
the
not
border.
just trails, you're right, they're roads.
They're roads.
And then when I look at those roads, you look at it and say, there ain't a reason in hell for those roads to be out there, except for the reason they're out there.
They're used by
cartels.
The cartel.
And coyotes. How about the human smuggling element? What percentage of the crossing occurring would you say are in this area right here, because this is rugged, is human smuggling or just families looking for freedom?
I've not seen any families, and I've not seen any children. This is a drug area, and we're told that if you want to come into the United States anywhere in this area, that you have to pack drugs. That's part of the price. The Border Patrol tells us that the Mexicans have to pay $3,000 for passage. The Middle Americans, Guatemalans, Hondurans have to pay $7,000 to $9,000. And if you're Asian, it's $25,000 to $75,000. And you can cheapen down the cost of travel if you pack hard drugs.
Wow. So you're telling me, well, it makes sense, because what you're saying is that the cartel controls this side of the border in terms of its crossing.
Everywhere, yeah.
And that they're charging basically a tariff to cross the border because they want this for themselves.
That's right.
And
they totally control everything. Let me give you a specific example. There's a little town down here called Sarek, and a couple of years ago, I guess it was 2 years ago, a group showed up in Sarek and they wanted to come across, and about half women, half men. And an old-fashioned coyote says, heck, I can take you across $300. You don't have to pay, you know, the cartel. And so they started marching up somewhere in this area, right in here. And they were getting near the international boundary, and they saw guys on horseback with guns circle them. And they drove them back to Sarek, and they raped the women for 7 or 10 days. They lost track of the time, over and over and over again. And they beat the guys, and they cut the fingers and thumbs off of the old-fashioned coyote. And then say, now you guys can go on. And a grader operator on a road back in here found them, and all they wanted to do is have the Border Patrol come. The Border Patrol did, and they were told that they put the women in the hospital and they bandaged up the guy's hands. But the real message was, no one goes across that border unless they pay the cartel.
Except for Jim Chilton.
I go under
yeah.
and over from time to time.
These guys, what you described, they're very ruthless. What prevents them from, you know, committing these kinds of crimes, and why don't they come over here and terrorize the people like that?
It's bad for business.
What does that mean?
I am hoping and praying that if they bump me off, guys like you and other friends will make enough noise to make it bad for business.
I see
And
what you're saying is the more that they piss us off, the more of us there are down there. And this is their #1 travel route for drugs into the United States. And they want as few people in this area as possible. So if they piss off Jim Chilton or they knock you off, they figure, well, we're going to have 10 or 15 other Jim Chiltons down here to get vengeance.
And the news media.
They don't like the news down here.
No.
And neither do the townsfolk.
Correct.
See, when we came to Arapahoe,
Maybe you ought to talk to Sue. She's better at all this
I would
than
love
me.
to talk to Sue.
The coffee's ready.
Thank you, Sue.
Time out, time out.
Yeah.
is that you guys were along here. Everybody that goes through Tom Kay's ranch also goes through me. Everybody that goes through the Tres Biotas ranch ultimately always goes through me. Everybody that goes through the Noons ranch ends up going through me. And so I actually have 14 miles of exposure, 4-strand barbed wire fence. And the only roads coming in is right here and right here. And then you've been along the
This
road.
is Warsaw.
No, that's the Tres Biotas.
I
Down
don't
in
think
the
we
Tres
did that.
Biotas
We did
range.
Warsaw Canyon and we've also we did California
Many
Gulch and
California
Warsaw
Gulch.
Canyon.
Yeah, okay. Well, this is California Gulch here. Warsaw comes down and joins California Gulch, and Holden Canyon comes up here. But all it is 4-strand barbed wire fence, and then the United States Fish and Wildlife, a wildlife refuge. They put a big bollard-style fence that comes to about here.
I saw that. A Ballard style.
Yeah,
Which is obviously made to be climbed.
But
but they can see through it. That's important to the
it's
Border
important to
Patrol.
the Border Patrol. The other thing is, the irony is, that's the wildlife refuge, and their claim as to why we shouldn't have at least an equivalent fence is it impedes wildlife connectivity. But we can impede wildlife connectivity on the refuge because they don't want the trash, the vehicles, the danger, wait a minute.
And the fires.
It's amazing. And okay, so what's interesting is you got California Gulch, Warsaw Canyon, and then you've got
Holden
Canyon.
Holden Canyon coming right down
Holden
here.
Canyon. These are the high traffic areas, and they're right down there in the same place. There's a river that comes out of Mexico or goes into Mexico right in this area, right?
Well, California Gulch and all of these drain in to the Rio Altar river system.
Is that what that is down there that you can see
Yeah,
that large?
Well, no, it's down in here and there and
Okay.
there in Mexico. There's 3 rivers.
And the 3 rivers are in Mexico. It's the Concepcion, the Altar, and I forget the other one, maybe the Mayo. But at any rate, they join together and they have they flow into the Gulf of Lower California. However, they are fairly far south of the border. They're not right at the border, and there are no rivers at all flowing into those from here, from this side of the United States, okay? What there are dry washes which run with big rains. I thought you might be late today since I heard they had 4 inches of rain last night in Amato.
Our guy slept out there in the middle on the road between 2 washed out ditches. Sean did.
Right? Oh my God.
Yeah, well, I heard there were abandoned cars and everything. Mary said that it was a record rain. But the washes fill up with rains like that, but they are temporary. They're ephemeral is the proper term. They don't keep running. so they don't carry fish and, you know. Somebody with a canoe is out of luck.
Yes.
They're going to portage most of, you know. However, the convenient thing for the drug packers is that the canyons run largely north and south. So they intersect the boundary, and they become channels for getting north. And they ramify enormously, meaning, you know, here's the channel, but it's, you know, it goes like that up
It goes
above.
like that up north.
Yes, it so that the scout can say, all right, take such and such a fork, this, because there's nothing looking like Border Patrol on that one, but there is one vehicle over on this other one. So they guide them. Now they also route would-be workers at times as decoys. This is one of the abuses that's perpetrated on people who think they're coming up to get a job. They pay the cartel.
Why don't you go over that with Sean?
Okay, all right.
This is
primarily
good
a drug
information,
rat.
Sean.
I'll be getting it.
But at times they will use would-be workers and tell them that, okay, we'll get you to Tucson or wherever. And so those folks pay ahead. Or they may promise to work and pay it off. Or they may mortgage their home property, which is some little milpa in central Mexico, and sign it over as security that they will pay it back when they get to the United States. But they aren't ever going to make it, because they will be used as a decoy, run them where you see the Border Patrol is, then a bunch of Border Patrol runs that way, and you run the drugs around the other way. Yes, and all
Tragic.
manner.
It's-
All manner of other abuses are perpetrated on these people. Jim, fairly recently, a couple weeks ago, was out checking some waters, and he ran into 4 Salvadoran men. They had thought they were coming up to get a job, but they were totally lost. Their guide had abandoned them way back in our country, and they were trying to get water out of one of the heavily used low stock ponds, which, of course, you know, the cows wade in, and it's not the world's best drinking water. We always carry water, and Jim gave them water and told them they didn't even know which direction was Mexico. They were totally turned around.
Not surprising, it is a jungle out there.
Yes, well then also the guide will tell them, oh, Phoenix is just over that hill. Well, it's over that hill 120 miles or so, maybe farther than that. And they will then, you know, mislead them, abandon them with next to no water and no food, and they're out there. And fortunately, most all of the neighbors, the ranchers around here, carry extra water, and we all find a way to contact the Border Patrol, and because these folks want the Border Patrol. They want to be rescued.
So these Salvadorian men that you ran across, you gave them water, hung out with them, called the Border Patrol, and they came and picked them up.
I didn't call the Border Patrol because there's no cell service.
Oh, yes, sir, that's right.
And so I told them I would try to find the Border Patrol and that I'd have the Border Patrol come, and I said, walk down this road, don't get off this road. And Border Patrol will, when I find them, will pick them up. And the fact is they did, and the Border Patrol told me, oh yeah, we got the 4 Salvadorians.
So they got, Jim, did they speak any English?
One spoke English, yes.
Okay, so you were able to communicate with them.
Yes.
What were these Salvadorians doing? Why were they coming up through this area?
They wanted work.
And so they hired a coyote to bring them across?
Yeah, I'm not sure. All they told me is their guide abandoned them.
Okay.
Now, you know, you take $9,000 out of their pocket, and then you bring them across the border and say, oh, Tucson's just over that hill, which is, of course, a lie. It's 80 miles over the hill. And then they abandoned them. They got their money.
See, it's bad. I mean, look, you die out there. You can die out there very easily. That is hostile territory out there. It's very rugged.
The other thing they do is force people to carry drugs, whether they intended to or not. There is a story about a large group of Guatemalans who said, no, we don't want to pack drugs. This is several years ago, okay? And so the cartel shot them all, buried them in a mass grave down on the other side of the border near, I think it near Sasebe. Or Sadiq, all right. At any rate, they said you will carry drugs. And we have other examples too, where one young fellow was with a group and he was obligated to carry drugs, and he wasn't in the best of physical condition, and the loads are, if it's marijuana, it can be 60, 70, 80 pounds. And the country is, you know,
I can
it's
hardly
not
carry
the,
my 30-pound pack back
yeah,
there. It's
yeah,
almost like carrying my own ass
it's
back
a very
there.
heavy weight.
Right
And
here.
yes, yes. But at one point, he sat down and said, I just can't go any farther. And so the cartel person who was in charge of the group grabbed him here and cut it off, grabbed him here and cut it off. He was bleeding profusely and said, all right, now you don't have to carry them. So the message to everyone else was, you will carry your load. Then that fellow, the way we know about this is he found a road and he was walking on it, and one of our neighbors, who was a retired detective, spotted this guy who was just
Drenched in blood.
terribly, yeah. And he got him help from the Border Patrol, and that's the last we heard. We presume he survived. But the cartel is not nice about its message to the people that are coming north.
And they're their own people. I mean, really, it seems to me like what they're doing is, yeah, they're abusing the vulnerable.
Sure, it's criminals tend to abuse the nearest victim, and those are the available victims, and they're highly susceptible to abuse because they don't know the situation. They don't know that Tucson is not just over that mountain. They don't know what kind of terrain it is. They don't know where anything is or how to find help. They are quite easily victimized. I actually spoke with two sisters down at the Jesuits run a comedor, which is a place where they feed folks on the other side of the border, and these are folks who've been returned from by the Border Patrol, and they are penniless, often in very bad condition, and what they want is a way to contact their family, get bus fare to get back to Oaxaca or wherever. These are all Mexicans because the Border Patrol doesn't send Salvadorans to Mexico, okay? Anyway, they're there, and they're penniless. They've been robbed, raped, abused, abandoned, and they're lucky to be alive. They want to contact their family, and they want a way to get back home. So the Kino Border Initiative runs this little center that's right at the where the folks are sent into Mexico. Yes, and we were there, Jim and I, and I spoke with two of the ladies. I do speak Spanish, okay, fluently. Okay, and these two were.
Español.
Sí, ella ya sabe. She already knows. Okay, so at any rate, the two sisters said they were 14 and 17. I think their real ages were like 18 and 23. They were telling the Border Patrol that they were underage. They were not, they were children still, okay? At any rate, I didn't ask them that question. I just took a look at them. So they said that their family, a poor family in, I think it was Guerrero, Mexico, central Mexico, which is, there's a lot of drug activity there. The cartel had said that they could mortgage their milpa, their little cornfield and their little plot of land, and the sisters would pay back the money when they arrived up here to work. However, they were used as decoys, most likely. They don't know it, and I don't know it, but I know they did not make it. They were clearly available candidates for decoys.
Okay.
And So now who owns their family land?
Cartel.
The cartel. So this is another abuse perpetrated by the cartel on Mexican people who think they're coming up to get a job.
One of my contingencies, or one of my contentions as I've been witnessing what I'm seeing around here, and one of the things that dawned on me as I learned more about the border is that border security is not just about protection of the American people, it's about protection of the Mexican people as well. And that I feel like I'm not in favor of a border wall for political reasons or because I support Trump. I'm in favor of border security, and I think the border wall is just symbolic of border security. But I believe that we're negligent as Americans. You cannot leave the door wide open and then blame everybody else if somebody comes in and kidnaps or rapes your own kids. We don't, you know, and so what we're doing there is we're leaving the door wide open, and what we hear about is not only the Kate Steinleys and the Molly, what's her name? Molly
Tibbetts.
Molly Tibbetts of the world, but there are 10 times that many victims on the southern side of the border because there's no border security.
A lot of
40,000. Let me hit that point. For those who like the idea of open borders, please have them take their doors off of their apartment doors or their house doors and let people come in. Let them feed them. Make sure they have hospital care and health services and education. Open borders, open doors. Oh no, we don't want to take our door off our apartment. Oh no, but it's okay if our country has an open door. And I disagree with your point on a wall. I think we absolutely need a wall. Trump has promised us a wall, and we need it desperately. And if we had a wall and the Border Patrol out of Tucson, 80 miles from the border.
That's another problem.
Yes, and at the international boundary, they have 27 people per mile. 27 people per mile. Now, if they were at the border, they had a wall, an infrastructure, they could secure the international boundary.
Yeah, well, and don't get us wrong, we're proponents of the wall. In fact, our armored personnel carrier has the whole front of it says "Build the Wall."
Oh, wonderful.
But, so when I say...
You just said the opposite.
No.
Well, what I'm in favor of is, in order, look, the wall is controversial. If I want to have I find a lot of times if I want to have a substantive conversation with an individual, border security is a more palatable term than the wall. Ultimately, the wall it's not an impenetrable deterrent, but it is a maximum deterrent. And the wall is something we support substantially. One of the things, Jim, that is a dream of mine is that, and I love this conversation. You guys are great people. I want to continue talking to you. One of my dreams is that, is to start building that wall myself. And I say that because I think we, right now, this month of September, we're at a pivotal moment in this country. Because Donald Trump, who we all know, when he says something, you know, he might screw around and do all his negotiation tactics. But he said, I'm getting that border wall funding on September 28th or I'm shutting down the government. Now, to me, it's more than just Trump saying that. This is the time. If Trump can't get that money out of Congress, no one will ever get that money out of Congress. And so we're at a pivotal moment here, Mr. and Ms. Chilton. If you look at September 28th and we walk out of this thing, he's drawn a line in the sand. He doesn't do that without enforcing it. And if he loses here, then what I think the broader message to Americans is the border is going to be open, and that's the way it's going to be. And so as Americans, you have two choices. You'll either accept that, which 99.9% of them will, or you won't. And then you, as Americans, we have to take it upon ourselves to secure that border because the damn government has failed us. What other option is there?
It's the government's job to secure the border.
It is.
Every country has a right to secure its border. You're not a country unless you have a secure border and a legal way to get workers in, important workers in to help us in the fields and elsewhere where Americans won't do the work. We need these people, but everything needs to be legal. But for me, it's not my job to secure the border. It's the United States government's job. And a wall is costly, and we have 25 miles of 4-strand barbed wire fence. Walls come out on both sides of Nogales and Sassabee. You've seen the wall at Sassabee.
That's right, sir.
Then there's 25 miles of 4-strand barbed wire fence.
If
The
that,
government has focused then people through that gap. It's the job of the government to secure the border. And guys like Tim Foley, 15, 20 of them, can go down there and secure the border for 3 or 4 or 5 mile stretch. But they're only there once every 2 months. We need the Border Patrol to get off their lazy wazoos in Tucson and get out to the border in forward operation bases. We can't do this as citizens, in my opinion.
I don't think we can either.
Yes,
But what,
right.
yeah, what's your
Hi.
Sorry, Sue.
The result of leaving the border as it is and not taking effective action. Now, effective action involves at least 3 legs to a stool. One of those is you improve the road from here to the border. If you've already been on that, you know what I mean. It's 5 miles an hour. At some places it's 1 and others maybe 10. But the overall picture is that the station chief from the Tucson station held a retirement function here for the ranchers on the border. And he said, aerial surveillance with the roads as they currently are and the situation as it currently is, aerial surveillance tells me what I missed. Well, that's nice. You always want to know what you missed, but that's not quite the name of the game. So first you have to improve the roads so they can get there in operational time. Second, you need forward operating bases, because if they have to come from Tucson, even if the road is a freeway, 60 miles an hour, which it will not be, you don't get there before the cartel has dropped its drugs at a GPS site and gone back to Mexico to get paid. Then the other item is you need a fence and you need a road paralleling it. The 2 roads that go down and intersect the border from here, Tres Bellotas and the Ruby
Why
Road.
don't you go over and just point it out
Well-
on the map, Sue? This is a very
Anyway,
good point.
Okay. Gary, you pointed out.
No, you
Yes.
you do it here, and here's the Tres Bellotas here.
Yeah, okay.
You can
All
show
right, anyway, these are our corrals down here. This is private land in one section. We have 20 acres down there that we own. We have corrals, water to it, level land, hills for observation posts, and we have offered it to the Border Patrol now for approximately, probably 4 or 5 years at the lease rate of $1 a year. And my husband said, if you can't find the dollar, I'll lend it to you. So at any rate, we took the station commander from Tucson, not just the station, the sector commander, that's over all the stations, down to these corrals and showed him the property and the convenience of the site. It abuts the border within football throwing distance of it. And what all the facilities were and how it could be useful. Then we drove back to where the roads join and came down to our neighbors' corrals, the Tres Bellotas Ranch, which is over here somewhere. Here it is, Tres Bellotas, I believe. And at any rate, our corrals are here. their corrals are here, and their house is here. It took us 3 hours to get up to the junction and get down to those corrals. Jim said, Lowell, how far is it, as a crow flies, from your corrals to ours? And he said, about 4.5, 5 miles. 3 hours. So the Border Patrol can't, even if they get aerial surveillance that tells them, first of all, they don't have cell phone reception, they don't have good towers that help them communicate in a timely fashion. But they can't get from here to here if they hear that the scouts are running.
No. They need
this way.
They need that.
There's no road paralleling this. So that was the third leg of the stool. You've got to improve the one leading to the border, or the two leading to the border here. You have to put the Border Patrol at forward operating bases at the border, and you have to build a wall with a road adjacent to it. Otherwise, your wall is an impediment, but nothing very effective. They do like Janet Napolitano said. Show me a 12-foot wall, I'll show you a 13-foot ladder. Fine, that works. If there's nobody on the other side waiting to catch you as you come off your 13-foot ladder. If they're in Tucson, your 13-foot ladder is a pretty good deal.
And tell me about the shift changes too. We're getting information that says that the shift changes are at 6, 2, and 10 or something like that, and that between the two the drive back to the station, and then the new shift drive to here, there's about 3 or 4 hours where there's no Border Patrol in the area at all. Is that correct?
It is not my personal observation. We see them coming and going.
Okay.
Now, nonetheless, there's far too much time on the road. And of course, they actually don't even go to the border. So your 2 and 3 hours of no Border Patrol is probably extendable to 20.
Okay.
Because
You're
they
correct.
aren't here.
I wanted to emphasize as well that, and I agree with you with just personal experience walking and driving down here in 3 days, this area is it's very rugged and it's difficult for some vehicles. So you're right. I mean, this area down here, and what we witnessed from the Scout Mountain was there was no fence at the border.
None. 4-strand barbed wire fence. But this really isn't all that rough. There's a canyon here and a canyon here, but this is all pretty straightforward until you get down to here, and then it's pretty rough as it goes on further east. But you know, we've got 15 miles of not really rough.
This isn't too rough. This is where it's rough, where the cartels are coming through.
Oh, yeah, but this is where it's rough.
Yeah.
This area down here is not. I want to make that point real clear.
Have you ever been to a ski resort?
Yes, ma'am.
What can American civil engineers do?
Anything.
Yeah, which means,
No,
yeah,
you
it's
can,
a little rough.
We were
but-
down there with Tim just the
Yeah.
other day, and we were looking at it. You know, I said, you give me a D10 dozer, I'll have a road down to that border in 5 seconds.
That's right.
Exactly.
And
That's
you
right.
can cut a road right into the sides of those mountains in 5 seconds with a big dozer like that.
Yeah.
It's easily doable.
It's highly doable.
Americans can do it. And that's why I said to you, Jim, one of my ultimate biggest dreams is that if they don't get that funding on the 28th, that we start, I want to start building the wall myself. There's 6 companies that made those prototype walls out there. All those 6 companies are being subjected to economic terrorism by the left, you know, trying to boycott those companies. Well, in our case, we'd love to do business with one of those companies and buy wall sections from one of those companies, because you can shame us all you want. We don't run away from, you know, we don't run away. You can't boycott our company, you know. We're the good guys. We're the constitutional guys. I mean, you know, it's just, we're impervious to that stuff. But if I could get a way to work with one of those companies that wants to sell sections, we can find a place down here and get some kind of lease, and we can dig holes in the ground right there on the border, and we can start sticking border wall sections in there, and we can crowdfund it. Let's say a border wall section costs $50,000. and another 50,000 to bring it in. $100,000 per section. We can just start raising 100,000, drop a portion of the wall in, drop a portion of the wall in, drop a portion of the wall in. And you're not going to get very far before the rest of America says, what do you want? You want the border patrolled and secured by Americans, or is the government going to get involved here? I don't know. That's one of my dreams.
Yeah.
I have big ideas.
Yeah, and they're wonderful ideas, and I love your spirit. The practicality of it is of concern to me. First, this is all United States Forest Service land. And you'll have to go through the environmental process, the impact, and the difficulty of getting anything done is an outrageous time period. And it's the government's land. They've been trying to put a road in here from the Tres Beotas over to this road here. For the last 8 years, they've been going through the environmental process.
For a dirt road?
For a dirt road, just from here to here. Now it takes around 2 hours to come up here and come down to here, where it
Because
takes 15 minutes.
The
to come across.
environmentalists will appeal to a court, and the court will issue an injunction saying that the environmental impact statement has not been completed, that you are endangering the whichever species is the most available, and you will get to prove that it isn't, but it will go through the court system. And if you were to try to go ahead with your road, you'd be in a big problem legally.
You'd be done for.
But you're right about the big D10 or D9. You could rip a road right through here in a week.
Butter.
Yeah.
Yes.
Butter.
Yeah.
And it's, yeah, so we're capable of doing it. We're stopping ourselves with these environmentals.
We just gotta have
But
Trump fund the wall.
You're right. So you guys, but you know what else I noticed this, the incredible message that you're sending right here is that everything you say supports what's happening right here. That's why the drug cartels are right here.
That's
Of course.
exactly right.
That's why they're here, because there's
Exactly
nobody
right.
else here.
That's right.
Because there's an open door. You know, wall here, where do you go through? Any 6-year-old can figure that one out. Next one is this area, because so much of it is federal land. I mean, we have a 20-acre parcel on the border, and other people have some parcels on the border.
Up here in Aravoc, and
Yes.
the rest of this is federal.
You're looking at a federal government agency's speed of motion. Good luck. All right. A lizard can outrun them. All right. And you're looking at the ability, the facility with which the opponents of the wall can throw roadblocks in your path. They are all over the place because it's all federal land. So you have to go through the entire appeal system, appeal through the Forest Service, then appeal through the courts, and then you'll be lucky you're still on Earth when you get done with the appeals. That's something the cartel knows. And people say, oh, we think the cartel is paying off the environmentalists. I'm not even sure they have to give them a nickel. They may be, but I'm not sure that the cartel's even having to pay, because the more radical environmentalists, like the Center for Biological Diversity, are as
You write that
equally
down?
committed to no wall and no impediments to immigration as the cartel is to no wall. I mean, they are equally wedded to the idea of an unfettered border. The environmentalists claim it's for wildlife connectivity. Our point is, it is wildlife connectivity. That's 2 words, wild life, 2 legs walking through. So the wildlife connectivity argument applies, facilitates the perspective of both of those groups.
Yeah. Well, and what was the name of that that Open Borders group?
Biological
Okay,
diversity.
well, what I said was Center for Biological Diversity, but it's not by any means alone. It's just the one that's most effective, has a stable of lawyers, and it is most effective at appealing federal agency decisions that they claim have not been adequately studied for their impact on fill in the blank. The jaguar, the wolf, the five-toed lizard, or whatever.
Center for Biological Diversity.
Center for
yeah, that's-
Biological Diversity.
And then there's other ones.
Oh, yes. They are highly active here.
Okay,
they're-
so Sue, sounds to me like the cartels are making millions of dollars on this border here that is our land. If anybody should be making millions of dollars on that border, it should be Americans. And the reason, and they control that, and then the reason they're able to do that is because it's not secure.
Absolutely. And you see, there are impacts that are humanitarian of leaving it as it is. And people say, oh, it's humanitarian to leave the border open. No, it is not. Number one, we get the scouts on the mountains inside the United States, employed by the cartel, directing the traffic. Second, we get the drug traffic coming through the open door. Third, we get what are called rip crews. Are you familiar with the term?
Rip
All right.
crew.
Rip crews, in Spanish, that's bajadores. That means the guys that come down and they try to hijack the load from the cartel. See?
These are Americans
Oh,
or other?
they may be Mexican Americans. They tend to be Americans, but they may also be MS-13 or whatever. It's an equal opportunity.
It's a no man's land out there.
Yeah, yeah.
You can do whatever you want.
The treasure is coming north in the hands of the cartel, and the folks who want to rob the train, shall we say. But this is 21st century
Go ahead.
hijacking.
I love
okay.
it.
Okay? Now that's the Rip Crew. Rip Crew is what killed Brian Terry. Brian Terry, the Border Patrol officer
Fast and Furious.
who was killed in Peck Canyon, just east of us, was killed by a Rip Crew. Happened to be carrying weapons supplied by the United States, meaning Eric Holder, in a program that they designed to Fast and Furious to get these weapons into the hands of the Mexicans. The weapons, don't ask me what their real objectives were, but they did it supposedly to be able to trace the weapons. But a very interesting thing happened on the way to the forum. The Rip Crew that killed Brian Terry was a group of persons that there were also Border Patrol people. And the Border Patrol, Brian Terry was shot dead. But they captured at least 2, if not 3, I don't remember, of the Rip Crew. And they captured guns that were in the possession of the Rip Crew. They sent those guns to a forensic analysis at their headquarters lab. It was in Florida. There were 3 rifles. Reports came back on 2. What do you mean there was a 3rd? The 3rd vanished from the face of the earth. And the 2 that the reports came back on were not the weapon that killed Brian Terry. Someone could ask me where I got that, and I can't say. But we got it from a high DEA person, okay? And the 2 weapons, reports came back. No, this didn't kill Brian Terry, and this didn't either. The 3rd weapon vanished. It's probably the murder weapon. At any rate, that was a Rip Crew, so that's another one of the effects of keeping it open. The scouts on the mountain, the drug trains coming north, the Rip Crews coming south. Then there's another one that we live with very daily. This town had about 1,200 people as population. It's a ranching and retirement and largely community. Large acreage, people have horses, they don't want to live in an apartment in the middle of a city, so they come out here. We have fishing and hunting. We're in a major whitetail hunting area. And so people find it very nice. It's beautiful. The hills are green. You know, it's
Love
pretty,
it.
okay? we dropped from 1,200 to 600 over the last 10 years. That's a 50% reduction in population. Why? Several things. Older folks don't want to be caught in the middle of what is a gang operation. And here's how that part works. There are families in town that are the pickup connection for the drug loads and people or whatever else it is. Cartel gets the stuff north to a point, a GPS site. Then they turn around, they go back. They're called southbounders. Southbounders have already finished their job, they're going back to get paid. They get paid well. They're not looking for a job up here. They've got one, okay? So at any rate, from here on out to I-10, I-19, I-8, across the country, you need someone to carry that leg. Well, families in town have competed lethally for control of the northern distribution route. Some years ago, there was a home invasion and murder associated with a group that was called a militia. It wasn't really a militia. It was a competing family operation that wanted control of the northern route, okay? They went into the home of one of the, yes, you see what I mean?
Oh,
got it?
You're saying that this was a turf war.
Yes, 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 yes. Okay.
Holy cow.
Yes.
Is that what is, okay, keep going, Sue.
That Shauna Ford and all of them, well, she saw opportunity, meaning, we can be in charge of this stuff. And so she allied with a family in town. I don't want to say this too publicly. They still live here. The ones that won live here, okay? So we have to be just a little cautious about what we say. At any rate, they went into this home of this other family. The two girls were 12 and 9, and mother and father. The 12-year-old was visiting her other grandparents that night. She lived. The father was shot dead. The 9-year-old ran up and, Daddy, Daddy, they shot her dead. They put 3 bullets in the mother, but the mother didn't die. So she identified the assailants. But the word put out was, oh, this was a militia. Okay, the folks who did this murder and engaged in this, they thought they were robbing. They didn't think they were finding evildoers to turn them over to the authorities. They thought they were robbing drugs and money from, see, the dead person was highly involved in that northern route. So they didn't come in to be some sort of adjunct to law enforcement. They came in to take over the business, okay? And they did, except that they got caught because it was staged to look like it was the Mexicans that killed the family. But since Mama didn't die, she had 3 bullets in her, but she lived. And she spilled the beans. Their story about it being Mexicans wouldn't wash, so the story had to be changed to, oh, it's a militia, these awful people. It's not what it was. So we we live in the middle of it, so we have to be careful.
That's right. And well, this all comes back to what I was talking about with border security being about.
Oh, yes, yes.
About protecting both sides of the border.
Exactly, and that was my point. That is another impact of a lack of security. That's the fourth one. The town of Arivaca has, now you see, there wouldn't be recruits.
Where did the 600 go? They went further north?
Okay, see, you would not have rip crews coming here if there were nothing to rip. You would not have the drug traffickers coming north if they couldn't get through. You wouldn't have the scouts on the mountain if they didn't have anything to direct. You wouldn't have the Arivaca connection if it wasn't a connection, okay? So leaving the border open, and you wouldn't have the persons who think they're looking for a job being used as decoys if the border were not open as it is. You have at least 5 very negative impacts of the current situation, and none of them are humanitarian.
You got that right. Yeah,
Better let you get on the road.
we should. You know, my team, Sue, we've been here for 5 days now, something like that, 6 days. And we've interacted with people around here. And the overwhelming feeling of this group about this town is that there's a big secret to hide. And they don't want anybody to know it. And they don't like us around, and nobody will talk because they don't want us peeling back the layers. Is that true?
I think you are right. There's a portion of the town which is very law-abiding, God-fearing, retired military or retired whatever. They're in their 70s and 80s, and we go to church and have a little sub-community. I mean, there's a community of us. And the ranchers are in that, too. The ranchers have, I don't know a single one who's in any way connected. I know one who at least is not opposed to the wall, but she's opposed for what she considers environmental reasons. She's one of those that thinks a wall would be unsightly, expensive, and all that. But not, I don't for one second think that their family's involved. I just think they have this other perspective. All the rest of the ranchers are pretty far to the right in the sense of we do not like the abuses that result from the current situation. However, there's a portion of the town that's live and let live. They don't target you if you don't make a lot of noise. Okay, I don't know where this is being disseminated, but you drove in here and you passed an outfit called No More Deaths.
Yep. That's the humanitarian operation up there.
Oh, that's what they claim to be.
Okay. No more deaths.
No More Deaths. Yeah, the one that's right on.
Right next to the
Yeah.
Mercantile.
Okay. Okay. If you've seen Tim Foley's footage, you've seen some of them leaving supplies for the cartel scouts. You see,
We're
do you know
curious
that
about that outfit.
Do you know what
What
that
is it?
outfit does? We belong to the St. Ferdinand's Catholic Church, and we run groups of people from all across this country: Georgetown, Notre Dame, University of St. Louis, University of San Francisco, everything in between one coast to the other. 89 different groups now have been through St. Ferdinand's, brought by the Keno Border Initiative, so that those people, usually in groups of 10 to 15, and they're usually university or high school with their adult sponsors. They're all from Jesuit schools, virtually all. There's one or two Benedictine or other, but almost all Jesuit schools across the country. They come here. We have a group of adults from Xavier University this next Sunday, and they will hear from the ranchers what it's like to live on the border, and they will hear about the impacts that I've described. After one of those presentations, which is after Mass, and then we have a luncheon, and then we do a seminar, okay? End of the seminar, in walked a couple who had just been over at that No More Deaths place. Now, they were from New York. They knew about as much about the border as my cat does, all right? But they were all well-meaning. They were going to help the humanitarians. So they had gone to No More Deaths and said, we would like to volunteer for a week. I said, all right, it's $400 a week to volunteer. They charge $400 a week for you to be a volunteer. That means for you to help go put out food. Secondly, somehow or other, they seem to know where to leave their water and food. There's about 10 million mesquite trees out there, and
They all look the
no,
same.
they all look. If you take your water and your food out there and leave it under that mesquite tree, the chances of somebody who's trying to find a job up here finding your supplies are extreme. extremely remote. Oh, no, 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 they don't do that. They know where they're leaving it. How do they know where they're leaving it? I don't know, but we can surmise. Somebody in the cartel calls some lawyer in Chicago, some lawyer in Chicago tells their head guy. Now, these little volunteers from New York, they're going to think they're just leaving it, you know. Some say, oh, go put this over there, and here's, you know. No, they're being used to help supply the cartel. In other words, look out, we have them headquartered on the main road here.
It's manifest in the locations where those water drops are, because they're obviously strategically placed. And the other thing too is that with the ruggedness of those mountains, there ain't no women and children coming through those.
No, there aren't. You're absolutely right.
Now,
Yes.
Jim mentions that in this area right here, which is where your 20 acres is, clearly, you know, we know what the topography's like down there, and it's some straight up mountains. These areas over here are more field type approaches. Is there any human smuggling going on in these lower elevations, or is it all just decoys, and this is all drug trafficking?
I think it's very largely drug trafficking and decoys, and the decoys are adults. That's not to say that years ago, okay, about 10 years ago, before the cartels took over these routes north, private coyotes brought groups north, and some of them were scumbags, some of them were trying to do their job. And they actually tried to get people to rides and stuff for their fee that they charged. Maybe 10 years ago by now, a family of a lady, a husband, and an 8-year-old showed up at church, okay? Church doors open, and they came. They were exhausted. She was sick. The child was in bad shape. They'd been abandoned and lost out there. But that is probably 10 years ago. And that's the only child who has shown up at the church.
Area.
Yeah, that I'm aware of. Now, our neighbor to the south, a ranch neighbor, found a group that included teenagers. You know, yeah, okay, they take 17-year-olds in the Army. I mean, they aren't really babies. There aren't any 4-year-olds walking that terrain. Yeah.
Plants do too.
Yeah.
And just so we can make sure we have it on camera, can we get you to say that there are no women and children?
Oh,
coming through
sure.
here?
Well, let's put it this way. I don't begin to claim to evaluate each group, you know. Those that I have seen are not women and children. We have seen video that shows groups that are women, but these are adults. I mean, they're looking like 25
drugs?
and no, the women do not appear to be packing drugs. They may either be decoys or they may be pre-consigned as, shall we say, comfort workers in Phoenix or Tucson or something. Who knows? We have no way of asking. The only women that I've actually had a chance to sit down and talk to were the two sisters at the Kino Center, the Comedor in Nogales. They had been deported, and they thought they were coming up to do housework, but they were decoys, or at least they were abandoned. They were picked up by the Border Patrol.
Yeah. And Sue, how long have you lived in this area?
31 years.
Okay. That says it all. Well, let's
And my husband.
yeah, let's start moving around and see if we can make our way down to the